Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Obama in Cuba. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about Obama's trip to Cuba, Ms. SPaz13. Ms. Paz has not been with us before. This is her first time being with us, and she will give us some information in reference to her background, her education, and some of the experiences that she had that eventually led her to us this morning. Now, Ms. Paz, let's talk about your background, your experiences, and some of the things that were important in terms of your life that eventually led you to us this morning.
Oh, hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to finally get to be on your show. Yeah, I grew up in Cuba. I left Cuba when I was 28 years old. And my background is musical education. I taught kindergarten for about 3 years. And then I realized that teaching wasn't what I really wanted to do. The music was my passion. So I worked as a musician for about 7 or 8 years until I met my husband, and then came to the U.S. So that's the root of who I am as a how you say, profession.
Well, now, how did you become involved with President Obama's Cuba trip? I mean, what do you know about that? Why don't you tell us as much as you know about that trip?
Well, that's a long story because I started working as a journalist about 9 years ago. And I immediately signed up to be in the White House press list, so I would receive constant updates of the White House, of whatever was happening, so I can have other stories to tell besides stories about entertainment. And I got the opportunity to cover his visit twice in Nashville when he came to Nashville. And I get invitations all the time for all the different events that the White House hosts. I just didn't feel like I should go because, you know, we had to travel to DC or whatever he is. But this time, I received an email with the invitation to go to Cuba, and I was like, oh my God. And I didn't know what to do, so I emailed a friend of mine, and she said, you gotta do it, you gotta do it, you gotta do it. So she helped me put it all together, and her husband used to be a journalist for CNN, and he's semi-retired, and I asked him, can you go with me? So he went, and the trip was amazing, unforgettable, emotional, extraordinary. I need more words to explain how it felt, because as Cuban, to be able to go to my country with President Obama, it was like out of the world, you know, out of the ordinary. And for my family, I don't even know how they felt, because my mom was just looking at me and not saying anything.
Now, was this your first time back to Cuba since when?
Since 2 years ago. I went 2 years ago, yeah.
How many times have you been back to Cuba since you first left?
Oh my God.
So it's a regular kind of thing with you?
Maybe 4 or 5 times, yeah. Because, you know, my family is still there. My mom, my brothers, my sister, my whole family.
Now, in terms of this invitation that you received, now, how did that work out? I mean, what was the... Give us some information in reference to that.
Well, the thing is that all the media that are on the White House list are invited to come, but you're responsible financially for the trip. They do everything, but at the end of the day, you have to pay for the expenses of the trip. That's how it works.
Now, how did Cuba look to you this time around?
It looked as the same. You know, they just fixed the roads where they knew that President Obama was going to travel through, or they painted the buildings, and the baseball game where it was hosted, the stadium was painted like within a week. And those things are just facade, you know, it's not what the real thing is going on in Cuba. It's more than that.
And so in a real sense, this gave you an opportunity to see your family.
Yes.
And what we want to do during this second segment is to show some images, and I want you to narrate some of the images that you will see and tell us about that, because this is really a wonderful trip for you, was it not? Yes. To go back and to find that not only are you with the president, but your family is still there.
Yes, it was amazing.
Very good. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll have the images, and we'll have about 8 minutes for those images, and I want you to narrate for us what we're seeing on the screen, and then after that 8-minute narration, then we'll have our final break, and then we'll come back for 10 minutes and to talk about some of your impressions and some of the things that you saw that you think that our audience ought to know about. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. And so this is an 8-minute segment.
Okay.
And what we want to do is to put the images up and to have you to and to have you to narrate those images. And so we'll do that for 8 minutes, and then we'll come back. We'll take another break, and we'll come back and we'll give you 10 minutes to talk about the trip to Cuba and some of the things that you felt about it and the emotions that you had in reference to. Did you go to the baseball game as well?
Yes.
You went to the
I put a clip in there. Yeah.
Very well. Good. That'll give you an opportunity to talk about, some of the things that this is a first-hand view in terms of President Obama's trip to Cuba. And we think that...
I should have brought the credentials. I forgot.
The what now?
The credentials.
You got the credentials that you used during the... very
I
good.
forgot to bring it.
That'll be fine, though.
Yeah.
But I think this will testify that you were there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so this will be our 8-minute segment. Now, we're going to do the images now, is that right? What? The images.
Yeah, they got it there. I'm going to be going there as well.
Oh, okay, very good.
Less than a minute out. That works.
All right.
Oh, we've got an extra hand. I don't have to do that.
Is it warm outside? It's still warm outside?
It's really beautiful.
It's not
no,
raining.
It's not raining. It's beautiful. Perfect.
No, we've got 8 minutes on this. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Ms. SPaz, and she's given us some information in reference to the trip that President Obama took to Cuba and her reaction to that trip since she participated in it in some fashion. And of course, Ms. Paz, we're going in some fashion, to make, because you were involved in quite a number of things, and taking pictures and et cetera. And as a journalist and as a person who in a real sense had an opportunity to go back to Cuba to see your family. And, and I would imagine that was quite an experience for you to be back into Cuba with the President of the United States.
Yes, it was. It was, because it took a while for us to get to the hotel. First off, we were 45 minutes flying around because the Cuban tower in Havana wouldn't answer the plane to give permission to land. So the pilot finally had to tell us, we have 2 hours of fuel, so we'll get you informed. So this is the moment when the President Obama arrived. So I was there at the airport filming his arrival. Unfortunately, it was raining, so the ceremony was cut short. So he just got down and shook hands with some people, and then they went off. And by the time I got to the hotel, my mom was already waiting for me, so I got to say hello. We talked for about 4 hours, and I knew that I didn't have time. I wouldn't have time to see her again. So we just took advantage of that little time, and we hugged, and I had to film myself doing a little piece about their journey getting there. And my mom was filming me doing my piece, and I was like, trying to hold it together. So, and then I just saw her just looking at the video over and over. And to me, that was quite emotional because I'm the only one in my family that have accomplished something that big. And for her to see me going back with the American president. It was an amazing...
Coming or going with the American president.
Yes, yes. So this is the little thing that I put together for the trip. And this is the street where we were standing at the baseball game, and you know, we went to see some Cuban musicians. You know, the Capitol building, funny, is under repairs. That's the same time as the American Capitol is in repair. I thought that was kind of interesting. This is the hotel where we stayed. It's called Iberostar Parque Central. And this is about the moment where Obama walked on the stage to give the speech to the Cuban people. This is where we stayed. We couldn't afford to stay at the hotel because it was $600 a night.
$600.
And I said, you know what? I can't afford to stay there, so I just gonna call my brother. My brother found me this apartment 2 blocks from the hotel, and we stayed there. This is the private plane that took us there. And the day of the speech, they blocked all the roads. So there was no access for the Cuban people to get in there. This is the place where he gave the speech, which is the Gran Teatro de La Habana, named after Alicia Alonso, the prima ballerina of Cuba. Most of the people that were in there were governmental people, doctors, and people of, you know, some...
influence.
Yeah, influence. This theater is just gorgeous. This is my first time in it. And I was like over the moon being in that theater. I mean, the details are just amazing. So I was like, I gotta write a piece about this. So this is what I filmed. I took some pictures, and this is from the view from the top of the hotel, Iberostar Hotel. You can see the theater right across the street. It's just gorgeous, and I am glad that he got the opportunity to talk to the Cuban people, because he talked from the heart, you know, and say things in Spanish and not just plain Spanish, Cuban Spanish, which is a little different, you know, like que hola, that is very ghetto, you know, very street-like.
And so in a real sense, you had not only an opportunity to go with the president, but to see some of the things that, well, what do you think about in terms of, I think you mentioned the fact that they painted some of the buildings before his arrival, and they resurfaced the streets and et cetera. But overall, what do you think about Cuba in terms of what you saw at that time?
See, the buildings, this is one of the side street, and I'm doing a story about the people, how calm they are, but they are very excited that the president was going to be there, and this is not being fixed at all. This is one of those streets that are like really near the main street where Obama was going to drive through with the motorcade. But you know, there is a long ways to go for the Cuban government and for the country itself to being rebuilt, and it's going to take a lot of money. And
how did the people feel? I mean, how do you see the people in terms of their feelings and their emotions in terms of the president's trip here?
The moment that I saw that you could feel, I still get goosebumps. The emotion was when we were at the baseball game. Because when Obama walked through that tunnel, all you feel was the trembling of the whole thing. It was full of Cuban people, and they were there waiting from 10 a.m. in the morning until he got there about almost 2 p.m. And that's when you felt the energy, and they were chanting and saying his name and moving the flag, and it was very, very exciting moment for the Cuban people to see that. And there was like, when I got out, there were people hanging over the top to see him leaving and to arrive. Yeah, yeah.
And so that was quite an experience with you and your family.
Yes.
Where was your mother at that time? Were the two of you together at all times? Or what?
No. I wasn't. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to see her again, so I just saw her the night we got there on the 19th, the night before. All the press got there the night before he arrived. So I got to the hotel about 8 p.m. and I got to hang out with my mom for 4 hours. That's it.
And so this was about your 5th time to Cuba since you first left Cuba as a child?
Yeah, about 5 times, yeah. Yeah.
And I would imagine that this was one that you will probably remember more than any trip that you've ever taken there. And so what you're doing now in terms of the images that we see, these are the images that you're using for your own television show. Is that not?
Yeah, this is what I filmed. All the coverage was for the Latino community, which my shows is for, you know, Entertainment Circle. And on my website, I created a special place, pages for the videos from Cuba. So anybody can go in there and see all my videos and
What's
my video
the site
blog.
number for that?
It's Entertainment Circle Network. It's circletv.com.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take this second commercial break, and then we'll come back with 10 minutes. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Whatever, political, social, or whatever, you know, some of the old automobiles. I mean, I would imagine. What were your impression about that, and the general status that you saw in Cuba? I mean, you know, we've got 10 minutes for that. And so anything that you'd like to talk about, feel free to do so. Okay, and then we'll be able to cut this out, and then we'll have. This will be an excellent show. I think that this is an excellent show, what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Well, I think it's information, you know, to say that we had a chance to talk to one of the persons that went to Cuba with President Obama, you know, and then we've got it on tape. And
well, at least on that first clip that he put up, I have my credentials on, so you can see it.
You can see it on there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, every time. We had a Secret Service guy assigned to us. For the White House press.
So well, why don't you, you know, this is 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't have any information about it at all.
Okay.
And so what you do is to just inform me
for
the next 10 minutes of this last segment on what went on while you were in Cuba. Did you have a chance to go out to dinner, or did you go to a restaurant, or did you go to all confined?
Only one time I went to that bar where the musicians were playing, and we had a daiquiri.
There was no free movement anywhere you wanted to go.
Well, it was, but I just didn't have time. The time was really tight. So.
Okay, to Cuba with Obama. Is that the name of this? Okay, so good. We're getting ready for this final segment. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We talked to Ms. Shayla Paz, and she's given us some information about President Obama's trip to Cuba. And of course, Ms. Paz, let's see if we can close out this last segment by giving you an opportunity to talk about some of your activities and some of your impressions in terms of going to Cuba, to talk about the environment, to talk about some of the people, some of the things that you saw. As a matter of fact, why don't you say something about the automobiles that you saw while you were in Cuba?
Well, you know, the American cars are still running in Cuba, and the interesting thing was that I was taking pictures all the time of all the cars that I saw, and then that night, the second night we were there, my producer say, okay, I'm gonna go to Floridita and have a daiquiri. And I said, no, wait a minute, I'm going too. I want to have a daiquiri too. And we went, the musicians were playing, and then when we were walking along the street, there was just one car that stopped, and I said, do you mind if you can open the hood and let me see what kind of motor you have in there? He had a 1998 Nissan motor in it. And I was, and I was like, wow, and you still have that thing running? And say, yeah, I gotta keep it running. So he had it as a taxi. So everywhere you went, you see the cars all over the street.
Old model cars,
models,
American cars for the most
Chevy,
part.
1950, 1960, 79, I mean, all of them.
And it carried you back. What were your impressions? How did you feel being involved in that kind of environment?
Oh my God, I really have no words to describe how is the feeling. It was just a lot of excitement, you know, and to be there in such a historic moment. For me, as Cuban and Cuban American, it was quite extraordinary. And the most important thing was, I said I had my own James Bond because we had a Secret Service person assigned to us as a member of the press for the White House. So everywhere we went, he will go with us, and they will give us a special credential for every event. We were divided in 2 groups because the time between one event and the other one were so small that we all couldn't go at the same time to all the events. So I got the opportunity to go to 4 of them, which was the airport, the speech to the Cuban people, the joint statement by the 2 presidents, and the baseball game, which everybody was allowed to go because it was the last event of the day or his trip. And it was quite something to see him that close to me because I seen him before close, but not that close. And he was genuinely happy to be there and to be there with his family. And I wish I would have had the time to go to one of the events with Michelle Obama, especially one that she spoke to the high school girls. But you know, you just have to do what they tell you that you have to do, and you just go and do it.
And so looking back over it, you think that this was quite an experience, and it's one of the experiences that you're trying to share with other people by way of your television show. Is that what,
yes,
that's what you're doing?
Yeah, my TV show is called Entertainment Circle, and it's online on my own website called Entertainment Circle Network. And the trip to Cuba, I named it To Cuba with Obama. So they put the hashtag TW and 2CWO, they will find all my coverage on Twitter, on Facebook, and all social media, and on my website. And I do honestly want to tell people that they have to go and check out Cuba and meet the people and feel the love and feel their energy and see for their own eyes what they are suffering, because politics is politics and people are people. You know, so you have to separate the two. You cannot get the politics in between the prosperity of the Cuban people, because they will never prosper. I mean, the changes in Cuba have to come within Cuba, and the Cuban people, as President Obama said, have to encourage that and promote that and have the first step forward to promote change in the government. But if we put a little step on it, it will help them in the long run.
So you think that what the president did in terms of recognizing Cuba is a very, very important step, and that it ought to be supported, and that the Cuban people were in favor of that? Was that the impression that you got?
Definitely. I got the chance to talk to a few people on the street, and they were very, very happy of his visit, and they all said that it's the first step in the right direction, and that they were very hopeful. They were really, really happy about that. So we'll see.
And so the president really made an impression, a real impression on the people in Cuba. And even the president, what did you think about, you had an opportunity to go to the meeting that he had with the president of Cuba. What happened at that meeting? I mean, how did that all come about?
That was very interesting because the Cuban president or the government is not used to doing press conference. So after they gave the statements, I didn't know they were going to allow questions. So I was lifting my hand every couple of seconds to get my chance. But President Obama took 2 questions, and he picked the people that he wanted to be asked from. And then those 2 people got the chance to ask questions to Raul Castro, and he just threw it back in their court. He didn't really answer the questions. He was like, where are the political prisoners? We don't have political prisoners. And they do, but he doesn't want to admit it. And the questions about human rights violation, and he just say, what country in the world fulfill all the human rights? Nobody does. So we feel 45 of them. That's all he said. But that, he sort of admitted that, yeah, we have human rights violation, but he didn't want to say which one.
But overall, you think that it was a very, very positive experience that you had by going to Cuba with the president, and that you think the president made a very, very positive impression on the people of Cuba. Is that what? Yeah,
definitely it was. And I just talked to my mom 2 days ago, and she said things are still not moving, you know, since our kind of like there were, but the parliament is in session right now, so they're waiting to see what happened after the parliament. Fidel Castro came out on television yesterday and spoke and said that he's going to die soon, and that he hoped that the Cuban people and the people that stay in power continue with his vision of the country and his revolutionary thoughts. So I hope not.
but you personally did not have an opportunity to see Mr. Castro, Fidel Castro. Did you see
No,
him?
nobody got to see
Raul.
him. Raul Castro is the president. Yeah.
But you never saw Fidel.
No, no. I was like impressed that I was that close to Raul Castro, you know, and see him for the first time that close in person, right there in front of me. But, you know, I didn't get the chance to ask a question, so I just had to wait for my next time.
Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes, Ms. Paz, and anything that you might like to say in terms of your trip to Cuba, or in terms of the president, or whatever, this will be your opportunity to do so.
I still have to finish my coverage, and because I haven't had a chance to finish all the editing. And the other thing is that since I have to put the money myself to go for this trip, because I'm an independent journalist, I had started a GoFundMe campaign, and we're still trying to raise the rest of the money to pay the White House. I just received the first bill, and it was $4,000 just for the plane. And they're still going to bill me for the ground transportation in Cuba and telecommunications. I assume food and water, but I don't know. So I'm praying that it's not over $2,000. So that's it. It was quite shocking that it will be that expensive, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
You think it was worth it?
It was totally,
the cost that you had to pay in reference to doing that, and the images that you have, and some of the experiences that you have was certainly worth it as well.